right, good evening. Oh, I clicked on
Yeah, I was gonna say
Brooke.
I'm big now.
Look at that and say, but good evening. We are live with another episode of Two Way Women Wednesday. I have Brooke Cheney with a Great Start Shooting School, LLC. That is her YouTube channel. She also has a web page, which all these things will be linked down in the description below. But really excited to speak with her tonight. She is also the representative for DC project with Connecticut. So that I did not realize until we had began speaking, and that was a really pleasant surprise and super excited about this. So I'm going to shut up now and let Brooke take it away.
All right then. All my alarms all of a sudden started going off because my kids are in school now. And so I just realized, sorry, I didn't mute these before we got started.
That's fine.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I am definitely fitting the I am a Second Amendment supporter and I'm a girl, so it works out for Second Amendment Wednesdays. Let's see. I know you said to just talk, but oh my goodness, where should we start? Do we start with what?
What you're doing with your YouTube channel, your webpage, what you're doing in the firearms community. You mentioned the DC project. Just a general overview, and then I'll pick your brain from there.
All right, sounds good. So it is currently 2021, and I have been around guns for a long time. However, I didn't know anything about guns until I had kids. And once I had kids, I realized I had these things in my closet that I really didn't know anything about. And that's really when my journey started. And that was 2006 and 7. I became a competitive shooter in 2010 as far as action shooting goes. I had people talk me into bullseye competition in 2008 or 9. And that's when I learned that a 10-round mag ban is a gun ban, because guns just come with standard capacity magazines that have more than 10 rounds in them. You didn't have to be a guy or a girl that went out and bought a gun and upgraded to the larger capacity mags. And 2010 is really when I kind of went from the person who, if you said, oh, 10-round mag ban, I'm like, who cares? They still have bullets in their gun. What does it matter? How does it affect anything? And then 2010 was when I went up to our state capitol here in Hartford and did my first testimony, shaking like a leaf. And I'm just like, 3 minutes of reading a piece of paper that I wrote, just talking about why, I'd done the research. It's like the 10-round mag bans have had zero impact on things. And so that was the beginning of going and testifying and stepping up and standing and learning. Also got really lucky because got into the competition world, IDPA, USPSA. I'd been shooting bullseye for a couple of years. And it's just like, every time I go to testify, I'm like, I really wish I could bring my competition family to the state house so they could really see all of these people who volunteer their time, give their days, weekends to put on matches, to encourage each other, that sort of thing. And it just gives me a lot of really good stories. I'm not a self-defense person or anything like that. I just really like having the skill set that competition gave me. And meeting all the ladies that I have in the Second Amendment community and in the competition community has been great, because I'd always been pretty much a tomboy. I really like hanging out with guys more. But I found that I actually like a lot of the girls that are in the shooting community. So I actually have girlfriends now, which is new for me. And I don't know. That's what I got for now.
All right, terrific. So, bullseye shooting. What exactly is that? I've heard of a lot of different competition shootings. SAS, PRS, all those things. Obviously, I assume shooting bullseyes is bullseye, but anything particular to it?
Well, the story of how I got in is actually, to me, it's very funny.
Okay.
In that I was at our club and someone says, Brooke, why don't you join our bullseye team? I'm like, dude, I totally suck. He's like, that's okay. We just thought it'd be cool to have an all girls team. So I was really lucky because I got into competition knowing it was okay that I suck. But bullseye is this crazy precision sport. We did it with 22 handguns, and it's, hitting this little tiny X at, 20 yards or so. So it's super, if you're an A-type personality where everything has to be just so, which a lot of the bullseye shooters were. But for me, it's like if I got it on the paper, which was like yay big, the X was like about the size of my thumb here. It was like, yay, I did it. But it's a huge precision sport, and indoors most of the time. And what I didn't know at the time is you can do it in all different calibers and things like that. I actually have my name in some NRA catalog for going to the state champions here in Connecticut. So yeah, so
That's
it's wicked
awesome.
precision. But I just
Now,
loved it because I tell people, I'm like, you don't have to be good enough to get in a competition. You just have to try competition to find out what you need to get good at.
now, any specialized guns? We always hear about these race guns that super light triggers, and it's nothing that you're going to see anybody ever carrying. Is that what you're using in that, or is it just your everyday carry?
So for Bullseye, we did like I had a Ruger Mark III, for example. But just like in USPSA, as far as the race guns go, they would have these custom made handles because it's one-handed shooting. And the grips would be like molded to their hands. Sort of like, when you see the air pistol or the air rifle shooters in the Olympics where they're like kind of held in place. That's kind of how the grips would work. But it's generally a long target pistol, like a Ruger Mark III or something like that. So,
All right.
but yeah, it's like I said, I was just thrilled that someone said it's okay that you suck. We just want girls to show up. So that was cool.
Definitely. So you mentioned that because of the competition shooting, that led you to realize that, as you put it, 10-round capacity limitations are really a gun ban. You spoke at the Connecticut State House. How was that received when you were done with that speech? Any reaction or anything?
I don't remember because I think I was just happy to be done with it. I was there with some people trying to help me and coach me, so that helps. Like people read my testimony, like, oh yeah, it's fine. I actually now I think about it, it was actually very encouraging because after the testimony, they asked me some questions and they said, you did a fine job. And then afterwards, I'm out in the hallway outside the room where everyone's doing the testimony. And one of the Democrats came out to me and he's like, it's so refreshing to not have someone threaten me and just tell me about what they think versus being like all stern and angry with stuff. And so it's like these are the sort of things where I realize like, they really are just people. They really don't have all the information and they really do need us to step up. And so that was sort of the aha moment, was not so much during the testimony, but after and talking to people. They're like, oh, good job, good job. And, most of us all take compliments and just sort of like, okay, thanks. But this guy is like, yeah, I really appreciate your time and your effort for putting all this information together.
That's terrific.
And then, of course, let's see, that was 2010. Then 3 years later, we had Sandy Hook, which was the most horrendous 3 days at the Capitol ever. We were
I can't imagine that.
Yeah, my kids were 5 and 6.
Wow.
At the time. So it's
that,
like,
I'm sure, really hit home for you.
Yeah, I mean,
not just being in the same state, but
yeah, no, having a 5 and 6-year-old, knowing that some of these parents weren't ever going to see their kids again, and it was just horrible. And it was one of those things, like Friday night, they're already calling for gun bans and in rifle bans, all of this sort of stuff, and I'm just like, these people are about to bury their children. Why I felt like they were already dancing on the graves that hadn't been dug yet. It was like, and I know like the NRA got flack for not coming out immediately. And I'm like, personally, I think that that's awesome that they didn't immediately jump out the way that the anti-gunners chose to. But it was just like, so for like 2 weeks, Christmas time, the week before, after, I'm literally crying every day. And so that January, I'm just like, okay, what actually helps prevent violence? What actually makes an impact? Because like at this point, I already knew most of the laws don't. And so I started studying the DOJ, FBI, the school education the federal bureaus of America say, all right, you guys have been studying violence forever. What is the deal? And between the hundreds of pages that I read, and I also brought to the Capitol with me, I had like a huge stack of all these different reports of like 10-year reports. So like after Columbine, the Department of Education, FBI, Department of Justice did a 10-year study on violence in school and school shootings. And the short version of that huge report that I read was it's about communication. It's about understanding the community. And then went on and I went to like gang violence prevention. And it's kind of the same thing. It's communication within a community and having community standards. And so I learned that, and that's sort of been a big portion of what I talk about when I go to talk is like, if we really want to save lives, let's actually work on the problem, because imagine how many lives we can save, not just those that die by gun, but also the just, in Second Amendment community as well as in general, it's like people are always talking about battered women and abuse and that sort of thing. I'm like, hey, imagine if both the Second Amendment and the anti-gun community came together and actually worked on preventing violence together. Like that's my ultimate dream, right?
Yeah.
Is that we focus on anti-violence, not just a thing.
So with that, why do you think it is that politicians don't pay attention to things like you just said about communication? If they really do want to save lives, they want to make a difference in these communities, why aren't they focusing on reports like that? Why do they just choose to try and legislate away these issues in the manner that they keep trying again and again with no results?
Well, unfortunately, it's the funny answer to that is that it's about communication, right? It's that someone has already told them that the one gun a day or one gun a month or something had an impact somewhere. And unfortunately, so many of us are swayed by anecdotal evidence. And you'll hear this horrible story about, like, I'll give you an example. Actually, at the Sandy Hook hearings, one of the days was on mental health. And one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that Adam Lanza's mom was trying to get him committed. But because he was 19, she had no way to do it. And so they're having this big hearing and they're talking about mental health, and they're talking about changing the law so that if I'm a parent of a 19-year-old, I can still get them committed against their will. And so that was the conversation that was being had. So this one gentleman comes up and he's like, my name is such and such. I was committed against my will. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I absolutely support this change. A couple speakers later, another dude comes up. I was committed against my will. It was the worst thing that ever happened. I wasn't ready for counseling. I think it put my treatment back 3 to 5 years. So there is no simple answer to how to fix things. And the politicians need something they can sign to say they did something. So the actual solving of the problems are super hard. The other challenge, at least here in Connecticut, is that some of these politicians have 2 years to actually accomplish anything before re-election happens. And so it's like they get 1 year to work on problems and they get 1 year to work on re-election. So the politicians just have this crazy job. It's sort of like a volunteer position. I mean, they do get paid for it, but it's doing something, and people want to see stuff passed with their names on it. And a 10-round mag ban is something that they can do and say they did something and get support from the anti-gun people, and it's not even always the anti-gun people. It's also just people who don't know what they don't know. And that's the other reason I love being at the Capitol, is that I never wear anything that has guns on it. I look like the typical soccer mom when I'm up there. I will talk to all the groups no matter what. And if they happen to ask me, I'll tell them that, oh, yes, I'm an instructor. And people are like, oh, really? Because you don't look like one, or, you don't look like a gun owner. And but I'll have the conversation with them, and They're like, I did not know that. Like the 10 round mag ban being a gun ban. They're like, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, I know. Most people don't. They think that, like I used to, politicians are doing the best they can for as many of us as they can with the information they have. And now that I've been in the political arena for 10-ish years at this point, some of them are really like that. Some of them are not so much. But it's just like any other group of people. There's really awesome gun owners out there, and there's some that we're not really proud of. So it just kind of goes that way. Every group
Most
has,
definitely.
their stars, the ones that you wish everyone was like this, and then you have the ones you're like, oh no, don't do that.
So, mental health is a big part of your YouTube channel, and like you just explained, your overall message and linking into two-way and how to better reach people that may not necessarily be pro-gun or two-way or anything like that. After Sandy Hook, I remember I was 23 or so when that happened. Before that, I don't remember much talk about the mental health aspect. Do you feel that after Sandy Hook that it painted a better light on the need for mental health and some reform in that department, or do you think it was more negative in where firearms owners almost use it as a cop-out every time when something does happen?
So yeah, I think the way things are presented is often not as concise or clear as it could be. For the 3 days that we had testimony here in Hartford, we had one day on mental health, one day on school security, and one day on gun stuff. And the way that it worked is they came out with like a 150-page document of all these things they were going to do. And the mental health stuff and the school safety stuff, some of the stuff, but not very much of it, was implemented. All the gun regulations were implemented. So this is the other challenge with them doing something, is that they have all this stuff that they put together. They took days of their lives to figure out how to do all this stuff. And then it just is sort of sitting there on the counter, because I think last year or the year before, one of the things that was in the education part was that there should be firearms education available in any Connecticut school. And so that was actually one of the positives that came out, because as you probably already know, the studies all pretty much show is that kids who are educated around safety of firearms are safe around firearms. And it's the kids that are told, don't touch, don't pretend like they don't exist, they're just evil. Those are the kids who tend to have accidents with them. So that was like 2014 when that was all enacted. And then like 2019, CCDL, which is our Connecticut Citizens Defense League, they came forward against like, hey, this is here. Where is the curriculum for our school system? And so luckily, that's one of the nice things about our smaller grassroots areas, is that we can pay attention to stuff like that. So it's, as far as your actual question about is mental health good or bad, it's like there were lots of things that were addressed. Unfortunately, I don't think there was a lot of stuff that was applied. And again, I think one of the challenges is like people who push to get stuff done and then they don't get reelected necessarily, then whatever their pet project just falls by the wayside and is collecting dust on the corners.
Yeah, and I like the sound of a lot of that, especially the education part. I've got 3 children of my own, and people always ask me, when do you get your kids involved with firearms? And I always tell people, one, you need to know the maturity of your child, things like that. But my general rule of thumb is, if they can start telling me, hey, Dad, I need to go pee, or I need to go potty, whatever. If they're able to comprehend that, they can start comprehending this is a firearm. This is not something that we touch. And people think 2 or 3, that's really young. I'm like, oh well, when they're over at a friend's house when they're 4 or 5, they're gonna have it ingrained in them really well that, hey, you don't touch that.
Right.
And like you said, accidents are avoided then.
Yeah.
So, how how did you become involved with DC Project? You mentioned that you've been in the political arena for about 10 years now.
Yeah.
When did you become involved with DC Project? And like I said, how?
Yeah. So Diane and I keep having this conversation. It's either 2016 or 2017. Um, and honestly, it's just, I think someone called me and said, "Hey, would you like to do this?" And I'm like, okay. Because the gun community, the competition community, at least, I think is relatively small. And A Girl and a Gun is a nationwide group that is for girls and guns. And I became involved with them early on, like I want to say 2011 or 12, somewhere in there. I met Juliana Crowder, who is the founder of A Girl and a Gun. And I have a feeling it was through her that Diana Muller got in touch with me and said, "Hey, would you like to do Connecticut?" I'm like, okay. Because it's like, it's one of those things. It's like, how did I get involved? Oh, someone invited me, I'm pretty sure. And do I know why? No, because I was in Connecticut and they needed someone from Connecticut.
Yep.
Is my guess. But like I said, I had been testifying. I have talked at various, what are they called? Gatherings here at the state. Rallies. There's the word I'm looking for. So it's like, after Sandy Hook, I actually was the first rally that I spoke at. I was, I think, one of the first speakers that day. And they invited me back the following year. And apparently I suck because they didn't invite me to get back again. No, I'm just kidding. Those are up on YouTube as well. You can just like look up Brooke Cheney and you'll find some of those things. But it's one of those things where, because I started speaking out and because people are like, "Oh, I like your message." Like, I've had people come with the state, like, "Can you write a speech for me?" And I'm like, "No, I'm just writing what's in my heart and trying to share it with others." Like, I can't write a speech for you. You have to find out what your spark is. Because one of the greatest things about the DC project with the 50 women from 50 states is that we're all significantly different flavors. It's like, my thing is mental health. We've got Gina, who's out in California, and she's part of the LGBTQ community. We've got Laura from California, who is the liberal gun owners president, owner, founder. I think she's the founder. Like that. So it's like, because it's I was going to say non-denominational, but that's the wrong word. It's non-political. As far as, it's just about firearms. If we just focus on the thing that we're trying to focus on, it gets more interesting. And we've got crazy hunters, people who are amazing, like Di herself. She's in 3-gun and she's really good at 3-gun. And Beth Walker, also an amazing competitor. And then we've got amazing hunters. And it's so funny because you're talking about being a correctional officer when we were off air before. And our Vermont chapter head is in corrections.
Oh, okay.
So, but yeah, so I don't know. It's fun that we're all so very different. And I don't know. It's thanks to A Girl and a Gun. It's thanks to competition. It's going and just putting yourself out there and just standing up for what you believe in and finding your spark that gets you excited. And I think that's why I got called, is because I have a different spark than anybody else.
I like it. Like I said, I really enjoy what you're doing with your channel. How has being part of DC Project affected your message with the politicians? Has it strengthened it? Do they kind of look at you when you come in like, oh, here's somebody that's just part of a national organization now? Are you guys still small enough where when you do go meet with representatives, they don't look at you guys as some big national organization, perhaps?
It's possible. It's really kind of funny, I think, because we're in Connecticut, so our senators are Blumenthal and Murphy, and Mr. Murphy is known as one of the most anti-gun people there is out there. He also is not very well educated about firearms, and he chooses to stay that way. So it was great because the first year that we went, myself and Holly Sullivan, who is currently the president of CCDL, she's our, I don't know what her job is, but anyway, in DC project. But at the time, we were just reps from Connecticut, and so when we signed up to see him, we said it's about gun safety, and so he is all about photo ops. And so when we went into the room, he actually showed up and he made time for us. And then when we're like, well, we'd like to actually help you understand, and we just want to be a resource, because that's really what our goal is to help people like him who really don't seem to know what they're talking about to have a better grasp and understanding. And when he realized that we were Pro 2A, that was the last time we saw him. We've made appointments at his office since then, but it was just kind of funny. We sat around the table agreeing to disagree. And yeah, so like I said, that's like 2017, I think. So 18, 19, 20, 20. So obviously not obviously, but we didn't make any headway last year. And this year is questionable because of everything changing so rapidly all the time. But I do think that we're well received. And one of the nice things when we go to DC is we break up into little groups. So I get to go to other people's states. And it's so nice to walk into a pro-gun state.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like when you're from Connecticut, where everything is like bad, black rifles bad, and that sort of stuff. It's just like, oh, it's nice to go to like Wyoming or something like that. So, but yeah, I mean, and we have definitely grown. I mean, Di is our superstar, and she's actually testified now at least at 2, if not 3, congressional hearings regarding firearms. And like, I think the latest was the red flag law, maybe.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, the fact that because all of it is all about relationships, right? Like I told you, my first testimony where one of the guys came out and said, hey, I think you did a really good job. I'm more than happy to talk to you. And it really is bending that one senator's ear or that one representative's ear and being like, yeah, I'm not trying to beat you over the head with, but here's what the FBI says about actual violence prevention. Here's what the Department of Justice actually shows you the stats as to these laws went in effect, like the 10-round mag ban for Massachusetts is my favorite because it's our sister state here. And no noticeable change in crime rates that were any different than any other state that didn't have a 10-round mag ban. Stuff like that.
Yep.
But they'll actually listen to you because you built those relationships versus
That's
just
true.
yelling at them.
Yeah. The whole shall not be infringed. Yeah, they hear it all the time. It falls on deaf ears.
Yeah, it does, because they don't care about it. They don't know why they should care about it. I mean, I was that girl. I knew nothing about Second Amendment. It took me so many years to understand why Second Amendment is so important, because I'm not good in history. It wasn't something I was raised with. I was the girl who literally didn't vote ever because I'm like, I don't know who these people are. I don't want to throw away a vote, but I also don't want to vote for the wrong person. So I'm just not going to vote. And that would be me 2005. Now, last year, when I went to vote, not only did I know every single person on that ballot, they actually all knew my name as well, except for the president. But other than that,
Yeah.
the senator, the congressman, the state reps, all of them. So you can always change your ability and your influence by finding that one thing that is your spark, finding that thing that gets you excited about sharing with somebody else. Because whatever it is, you're going to research it harder than anyone else. And you're going to be able to present it in a way that no one else can. And you have to step up. You have to reach out. And yeah, just saying Second Amendment shall not be infringed is like, they don't listen to it at all. They don't hear it. They don't care. I mean, the ones that are for Second Amendment already will like, yeah, go. And they love to be encouraged. But at the same time, the ones that are against it is like, oh, not these guys again.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, when
it's
it comes
hard.
down to it, it's pandering, you know. You're at a rally or something and say it, yeah, like you just said. But when you're, you know, say you're a Boston Bruins fan and... my dogs are
Their
barking.
dog's not mine. I told my husband, I'm like, keep the dogs out.
Yep. Probably the kids. That's all right. But no, so say you're a Boston Bruins fan and you're in Detroit. Well, you can shout "Go Bruins" all you want. All the Red Wings fans are going to drown you out.
Yeah.
You know, might as well mansplain with a sports analogy, right? Sorry.
It's all good. Well, no, because it's about your it's about your audience, without a doubt. It's
Yep.
not, and it's one of those things where it's like, is our Second Amendment important? Absolutely. Did I understand that for a long time? No, not at all. Like, I had no clue why that was important or if that should be important. And so that's why I'm like, because I was so clueless, it's really why I don't try to talk about Second Amendment. And there are people like I was saying at the DC Project, we have some amazing lawyers, like legit lawyers, who are great at explaining how and why these things work the way that they do. That's not my wheelhouse. My wheelhouse is mental health, suicide prevention, and violence prevention. And
So,
so you got to go where you're strongest.
yep, absolutely. So you mentioned that you're a trainer. How did you get into training? Do you train a lot of ladies? What's the ratio like for you, male to female?
All right. So another funny story for you. I had no desire to become an instructor. Zero. We bought our home in 2010 and I got into competition and we built a little range out back. And it was cool enough that I'm just like, okay, I want to get insurance because I was raised by a family of lawyers, quite honestly. So I'm like, so I called up insurance company and I'm like, hey, can I get insurance for my range? And they're like, are you an instructor? I'm like, no. And they're like, I'm sorry, unless you're an instructor, we can't sell you insurance. I'm like, huh, okay. So I went on the NRA website. I looked up instructor courses. And now this was a Tuesday, mind you. And there was a class that was starting that Thursday. So I called up the contact on there. I'm like, hey, do you have any room in your instructor class on Thursday? He's like, yes, I do. So by that next Monday, I became an instructor just so I could get insurance. I
That's
never
great.
I never planned on teaching anyone. I certainly didn't plan on opening a school. Um, and so it was like, that was, I think, 2011 or 12. I always forget. And then by like 13, people were like, oh, don't you have the certificate? Can't you do my pistol permit thing? So it's like, all right. So I ordered a couple books from the NRA and I did a couple friends and family. And then honestly, I got into A Girl and a Gun and traveled out to Texas. And it was like I went to the first Girl and a Gun conference and it was the coolest thing ever. It's like, you don't have to know anything and you can go and have fun with guns. And I'm just like, this is cool. And we have a chapter here in Connecticut and I helped out with it. And 2013, I finally decided, I'm like, I want more women to be able to have the experience I had, which is getting taught from a woman, by women, for women kind of thing. And just going from clueless to confident because it just amazed me. Like, I had my Wonder Woman moment, I call it, when I could finally pack my own bag by myself. Like, I knew which gun to put in the bag, and I knew which magazine went with that gun, and then I knew which ammo went with that gun, and I didn't forget my eye and ear protection or my hat, and I knew all this stuff in the bag, and I'm like, I'm amazing. And I was just like, I just wanted to give that to more people. So that's when I decided to open the school up. And I finally opened the January 1st, 2014. And then let's see, a couple years later, a friend of mine says, hey, are you a training counselor? I'm like, no, I have no desire to teach people how to be instructors. He's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. And then like another year goes by. He's like, are you a training counselor yet? I'm like, no. He's like, well, I want my daughter to be taught by you. So become a training counselor. And I'm just like, oh, fine. So I finally carved up some time, went down to the NRA and got my training counselor certificate so that I could now teach people how to become instructors as well. And to your question about so many of the things I've done in the gun world were not on purpose, were not my idea. It was someone else said, you should do this. And so anyone watching, I'm telling you, you should do this. Find your spark, get involved, help however you can. You might not be great at talking to people, but you might be awesome at fundraising. Or you might not be great at fundraising, but you might be really good at organizing and helping people get together and create events and stuff like that. So find something that's really cool for you. But that's how I became an instructor, and then how I became a training counselor. And as far as my students go, because we were talking about kids before, my youngest student was 3, and my oldest first-time student was like 86. And I would say I have a 50-50 grouping as far as men versus women in my school. So as far as school averages go, my average is higher than most, because I do market towards women, hence my logo being 2 girls leaning on each other. And my instructor friends give me crap about my logo because they're leaning back. And I'm like, dude, it's called A Great Start. It's not called the Perfect Shooting School. So, it's okay that they don't have perfect form. But yeah, so that's how the school started. And that's kind of my demographics, is about 50-50. And I don't hold anything against men. Matter of fact, probably the question I get often is, do you teach guys? I'm like, yes, I will teach guys. So, and my insurance company, though, just made it so that I can only have kids 12 years and up.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like, before I was doing a small enough business, they didn't care. But last year I finally made some money, and they're just like, oh yeah, you need to, it's 12 and up. We suggest 12 and up. So that's where I'm at now for my kids. We have Boy Scout events and fun stuff like that as well.
That's awesome. So, going back to the suicide prevention Saturday, briefly mentioned it before. You do that on your channel, which is actually, oddly enough, how I come to learn about your YouTube channel and what you're doing. Gun Websites does a weekly wrap-up thing, and he had shared it a few times, just something that you did, like, hey, here's a video to go check out. And like I said, that's how I learned about you, and I started paying attention to the Suicide Prevention Saturday and things like that. Now, I believe in this most recent one that you had posted, you had actually talked about, again, I'm relatively new to your channel still, so if it was mentioned before, I can't say, but I do recall in the most recent video you had mentioned that a family member of yours had passed due to suicide, and you're talking about, again, communication, de-escalation, things like that with this most recent one, which I found really interesting and captivating, especially having had a family member of my own commit suicide. So I'm assuming that's where your motivation comes from for the suicide awareness and prevention.
So the answer is actually no.
No?
No.
Oh,
because,
boy.
So here's the thing. No, but here's the thing, is that none of my family members have actually committed suicide.
Okay.
My dad, however, was suicidal, but I was also suicidal as a teen. And the impetus for this actually came out of a family member having a really hard time. And it was like, I kind of watched her struggle through a ton of stuff. And I'm just like, people just don't even know. They just don't want to talk about it. They don't want to. And my family member was struggling. She was never suicidal, but I just remember being suicidal. And my husband's had to, we've been together for a long time. And he was with me when I committed myself back when I was like 18, 19. And so it was one of those things where it's like, I'd been on the other side of how it feels to feel that horrible. And then I just see how, people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to. And then I go to other people's funerals who have committed suicide. Like back in 1990, I think, maybe, I was in group counseling, and one of the gentlemen that was there was a doctor, and he was in counseling with us, and his insurance ran out. And the doctors, the nurses, the clinicians all called the insurance company and begged and pleaded with them, saying, no, he really needs to stay. You have to extend this. And they're like, no. So that January, I ended up going to that guy's funeral.
Wow.
And it's one of those things where at that funeral, that was the first funeral that I'd ever been to that was from a suicide. And I just had to tell the family, I'm like, guys, he loved you more than anything. It was, he lost the battle with with the monsters inside of his head. It's like, it's not that he didn't want to live for you guys, because he did. Because I figured after he's dead, the patient confidentiality thing kind of probably goes out the window as a group member, right?
Yep.
So, but it's like, I just felt like I had to go to that funeral and let them know. It's like, he talked about you guys all the time. He loved you so much. He wanted to live. He just didn't know how. And so it's like, that was my first suicide, a funeral from a suicide. And so that was my younger self, right? And then as I'm older now and I'm dealing with guns and, oh, let's talk about suicide prevention. Oh, but wait, let's talk about gun violence. Wait, what does that have to do with each other? It's like 2 out of every 3 gun deaths, 2 out of every 3 is a suicide.
Yes.
And just like I said earlier in the podcast, is that imagine for a moment if we actually focused on suicide prevention. Not only would we prevent the suicides that happen with a firearm, but all the other ways that people do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, but this is where getting into the competition community and getting involved in veterans groups, because veterans groups is 22 a day. There are 22 veterans a day that are committing suicide, and raising awareness for that as well. So yeah, so my impetus is like kind of multitasked, right? Multifolded as to how and why I got to where I'm at. And there's so many reasons why I do it. I think just like you doing this show, I'm sure you'll get comments and things that people say, oh, thanks for doing the show, interviewing so-and-so. I didn't know this, right?
Yep.
And with the Suicide Prevention Saturday, it's also that encouragement. Like a couple of years ago, I used to just do them on Facebook Live, right? And now I'm trying to do Facebook and YouTube, which I goofed last week. So that could be why it was messed up. With doing it live, it's like Facebook, someone sent me an M saying, I've been going to 4 different counselors for the last year and a half. And in the 15 minutes you did this, you gave me more to think about than they ever did. And so it's like getting compliments or comments like that. I've also become a resource for people. Another friend of mine in the shooting community, last Christmas, their neighbor committed suicide on Christmas Eve. And I was the first call that they made. And it's not that I can fix anything for them, but at least there's something or someone, and I've got resources to say, oh yeah, here, talk about what was good. You know, I lost my baby sister her senior year in college, and my mom and I were like, okay, we're going to remember to ask what's good about this. And people are like, are you kidding me? That was what you're going to ask? I'm like, yeah, my sister was dead. Obviously, we want to deal with all the garbage because everybody knows what sucks when you lose someone in your family. But if you ask yourself better and more empowering questions, then it makes it better and easier to deal with the problem. You won't get the answers immediately, but you'll eventually get them. So my long-winded question as to what actually inspired me to do Suicide Prevention Saturday is just all of the above or all of the below, depending on how you'd look at this if it were actually in text.
No, that's great. Yeah, I'm sorry for misunderstanding.
That's okay.
What you had said on Saturday. Like I said, I am new to your channel still.
Yeah.
I mean, been watching a month or so. I take in a lot of content, but especially when I'm going to be talking to a person on an interview like this, I try and do a deep dive and whatnot. So,
Right.
but yeah. So we've got about 15 minutes left or so. And I think I told you in the last 15 minutes to ask a few random questions that people viewing are interested in knowing.
Okay.
And we'll kind of wrap up that way. So I guess first one everybody likes to know is top 5 guns. Now these could be favorite guns of your own, top 5 guns that you feel are just great for anybody to pick up and use if they're a first time shooter, whatever you want to go with.
All right. So top 5 guns. I would say my favorite to learn on are my Rugers. I've got 2 Mark. What are they? You said top 5, so I'm going to say Mark 5, Mark 3 gun Rugers. One is the Target, and one is the 20 something 45. I am so not techie when it comes to guns, just so you know. It's like, it's a gun. Put stuff in here, pull this, it works. It's like one of my other girlfriends who's a instructor, Tatiana Whitlock. She's also part of the DC project. She's actually the trainer for DC, or sorry, A Girl in a Gun. But she's got shirts that are made, do the thing that does the thing. And I'm like, that's my kind of t-shirt when it talks about like tech stuff, right? Then my first competition gun that I absolutely loved was my Smith & Wesson M&P Pro, and with an Apex trigger in it, for those of you who want to get geeky about it all. And it was great because it came from the factory, and I was brand new shooter. So I knew that I sucked. And so it's like, I'd hit the target sometimes, not hit the target sometimes. My husband, on the other hand, is an amazing shooter. And one day he took my gun to the range, only to find out the sights had been off. So I felt better. So that's why it's my other favorite gun, because it really was the sights that one time. Let's see, that's 2. I got to come up with 3 more. I now have a CZ Shadow SPO1, which I use for my competition, both in IDPA and USPSA for production. And what else do I like? I don't know. I like rifles and shotguns. I do a little skeet, little bit of rifle shooting. I don't really have a favorite. I'm not going to lie. I like a lot of the PCCs. I had a Ruger, but I don't know what it was. It was just Ruger was sponsoring the match, and they had a pickup gun for you to shoot that was a PCC. So all I knew was it's 9mm and a PCC. So, and it was by Ruger.
Say it's probably their pistol caliber carbine. I think they call it the. I can't even think of it right now.
Yeah,
I have one.
Yeah,
and
I have a whole bunch of them. They're like potato chips, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get one, and it's for this. And then you get another one, it's for that. And
PC9.
Okay.
And then they have the Charger, which is the pistol version.
Okay.
Which I think they put a side folder or something on it. So, a brace, and yeah. So you mentioned shooting skeet. Do you have a particular shotgun you prefer for that?
So this is how, like, I just will go up into our gun room, and I will grab one, any shotgun that happens to be there, and I will go shoot with it. We have some break actions. We have some. I think the last thing I shot was my Remington pump action for skeet.
Okay.
And it's one of those things, you go to these skeet things and these trap shoots, and they have these fancy wooden, pretty shotguns that is just like, yeah, I'm just gonna go click, click, and it's just fun. And they just kind of look at you like, oh. But anyway, it's still fun. Like I said, my Wonder Woman moment came from not knowing what brand and caliber and style of gun I was using. It was understanding I could pick up any gun, or 90% of any gun, and unload it, verify it was clear, load it if I needed it, and shoot it. And so I never got into the techie, ooh, I love this for that. Because all my students are like, what gun should I buy? I'm like, let's figure out what is going to work for you. And so that's why I was like, what's the favorite gun? I'm like, I don't know. Right now, my CZ, because that's my competition gun. So, all right, we got to 5-ish.
It works. Preferred carry method: inside waistband, outside, off body, say in a purse, maybe anything like that.
All right, so ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
I don't carry.
Oh, all right.
However, all my girlfriends yell at me, like, why don't you? I'm like, because it's a lifestyle thing, and it's just not my lifestyle. When I carry, once in a while, it will definitely be on body. It'll be inside the waistband, that sort of thing. Although Kathy Jackson, who wrote The Corner to Cat, is one of my favorite authors and instructors. And I was totally against off body carry. Like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I leave my purse behind. I've lost my purse before. It would be mortifying to leave my purse behind and have a gun in it. But she changed my mind into, you want to have a backup carry method with you, because what if your belt fails? What if your holster fails? Something like that. In Connecticut, though, here we do have legally open carry, so you could do, outside the waistband, that sort of thing. But yeah, for what little I do, it is inside the waistband. But definitely not my prime focus for sure. Oh, wait, I will say Kydex, though. None of these silly little pockets of fabric that people have Velcro on. I'm just like, no. But it's still better than folks that just stick a gun in their pants. So,
That's
it's
true.
relative. But yeah, no, totally Kydex. Kydex and leather to make it more comfortable. But yeah, a holster that actually fits your gun and keeps it secure, regardless of where on your body or in your purse. So,
any two-way advocates or activists that you look up to?
Let's see. Holly Sullivan, who's our CCDL president, Di Muller, who's our great founder at the DC Project, Juliana Crowder for starting A Girl and a Gun, and then her sidekick, not really her sidekick, I don't know, her confidant, but Robin Sandoval, because she's amazing. I love Dick Heller because he is hysterical to talk to. Got to meet him in DC. And Maj Tor, I always say his name wrong.
Toure, yep.
Yes, thank you. Who I keep meeting by like live and in person. Like every time I go to DC, oh, he just left, sort of thing. So I'm like, I'm looking forward to meeting Maj one of these days. Oh gosh, who was I just thinking of? Colleen Noor. So those are ones that come to mind like wicked quickly as far as like people I either know or I've seen or I follow.
Okay.
So,
what is one of the most common questions you get asked?
What kind of gun should I buy?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, and some people will ask, like, how do I get involved? But as far as like teaching and stuff, it's usually like, what gun should I go buy? What gun should I go buy? Because they're all excited because they just got their pistol permit and they can actually go buy a gun. And like, what should I? I'm like, I actually made a class just for that. It's called Find Your Perfect Gun. And we go through what's your experience level? What are you going to use it for? All these things that when you're a brand new gun person, you have no idea even what questions to ask. So I would say that's probably the other question I get is, how do you do all of it? Like DC Project, Girl and a Gun, run my own business, that sort of stuff. I'm running for office this year too, also here at my town. And I was it's one of those things. I was the Republican Town Committee chair for many years, on top of all of these other things. And I'm a mom of 2 kids and a wife of 22 years. On Saturday. Although when you're watching this show, it'll be the previous Saturday. But yeah.
Well, congrats to that.
Thank you.
All right. And I think the last question for you is, what's the worst thing that you've had happen as a firearms owner, or perhaps even female firearms owner, whether it's derogatory comments, any bad questions, or stereotypes that people pushed on you and you didn't prefer?
Yeah, so I would say like the worst memory I sort of have was when I was first starting, and there was this guy, and I'm with my husband. I'm maybe into competition at this point, maybe just before I get in competition, and we're at the range. And he was trying to help me. And he was so condescending, and to me and my husband, not just to me. It was like I almost left in tears that day because he was just trying to help. He was just trying to help, but he was just kind of being a huge jerk about it. And it's like, that's kind of like my only bad memory about having anything to do with guns and me, is that I'm like, I almost gave up that day.
I was about to ask if it almost, made you give up. I'm glad it didn't, because wow.
And I mean, and the interesting part about that is that I still know that dude. And now that I know him, I know that his heart was actually in the right place. He just didn't have those soft skills to deal with the little nervous me.
Yeah.
Because I mean, and it's one of the things I try to explain to my girls, all my students and stuff, is like, people are so excited to see women on the range. And sometimes they're overly excited. And that's usually the story that I'm thinking of in my head is him making me want to cry and leave and never come back. And it's just like, he really meant well. He really did want to help. He was excited to see us there as new shooters. So yeah, it's just another lesson in life. I definitely believe that some of the crappiest things that happen to us are some of the best lessons that we ever get to learn, as long as we learn how to use them.
Yes.
So.
All right. Well, I do believe that brings us up to our hour, and like I tell all my guests, I could keep you here all night and just talk your ear off, because so far everybody has just been so interesting and such a great conversation. But you're obviously extremely busy. The fact that you were able to take the time out and do this with me, I greatly appreciate. So I'm gonna be quiet once more and give you the final say. Anything you want to plug, anything you have going on, coming up, classes, events, etc. Floor is yours.
All right. So I got like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. I'm used to my 3 minute spiels at the thing.
You take as long as you want.
All right. So I guess to sum up, I would just say, find your spark. Whatever your spark is that is going to get you to take action in the Second Amendment community, whether it's helping someone like me get organized, or maybe it's just donating $5 or $10 to your favorite Second Amendment group. Do something that makes you feel happy about supporting and helping people. 2, as far as stuff that I do, I teach. I do online teaching as well for gun safety and that sort of thing. If you're local in Connecticut, although I will say I've had students as far as New Jersey come up here for our lovely little private range out back, that is the reason that I became an instructor. Check me out at agreatstartshootingschool.com, and you can book right there. What else? What do I have coming up? DC Project. We are going to training in October. I'm looking forward to that. And I don't know, honestly, if there's something that interests you, whether it's guns, learning about our rights and freedoms as an American, look into it more, learn more, and then know that your information really does need to be shared with your town reps, maybe, and maybe with your state reps, and maybe with your federal reps. And you don't know where it's going to lead you, because our founder of DC Project, Diana Muller, she was inspired by one lady. And now Di inspires the 50 of us from our 50 states. And you might be the one who's going to inspire the next 50 women from another 50 states. Or, well, there's only 50 states, but you know what I mean. So see the smile, figure out what makes you smile, figure out what's worth fighting for, and why it's actually worth putting the time in. Because like he just said at the beginning, I am very busy. We're all crazy busy. It's absolutely insane how busy we all are. But we will absolutely make the time for that which is important enough for us to make the time for. How's that? So yeah, that would be my thing, is find out what you can do, how you can help. It could be something that you don't even realize. Maybe you're really good at transcribing. Maybe you could put subtitles under this. Whatever it is, you have a gift. I just ask that you try to find it so you can help the Second Amendment community maintain our freedoms. And that's what I got for you tonight.
That was terrific. Thank you. I would just like to reiterate to everybody that these ladies with DC Project are doing all of this out of their own pocket. So, is it dcproject.org?
It is, yeah.
That's what I thought. Because I should just bookmark it, because I go there enough. But normally I just punch in DC Project to Google and do it that way, because that's so much easier than bookmarking it. But yeah, so dcproject.org. They also have a Facebook. But go there, support them. support Brooke, everything she's doing. They are doing some amazing work. So I'd like to thank you again for taking this time. I'm going to roll the intro, which is now going to be the outro, and we'll kill the recording. And if you want to stick around and talk a little bit in the after chat, you don't have to go anywhere yet.
Okay, cool.